I have a collection of C.S. Lewis's diary entries. There are some interesting tidbits. Let's see what Robot Lady thinks. This is from a letter from C.S. Lewis to one of his friends. The letter was dated in 1950, and it goes something like this. To Dorothy Sayers, concerning a speaking engagement, I would not want to lose a few weeks to find cool weather in Oxford. I can't remember if this is the 7th, 8th, or 9th refusal I have made to speak at such a place this year, but it's certainly one of the 3. So one of his friends concerning teaching duty somebody, possibly myself, ought to warn them that they are risking the opening of the pit and the start of a great war. I shall certainly not let them do it if I can help it. Somewhere on the road, in the dark, they must take on new supplies, and we must stop and rest and eat. As for food, I shall soon be able to get plenty for them in the nearby town. A note written to his brother, dated 1951. Dear Jack, I have been reading your letter, and think it would be a mistake to change anything in it. Of course, you must follow your own judgment.
Hi, I am Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in today's episode, C.S. Lewis is 27 years old. He has begun his career as a tutor in English language and literature as a fellow at Magdelan College, which is a part of the Oxford University College system. Oxford University system? Don't know quite how to say that. Let's see. I'm trying to find my little write-up here of what I usually say, and it has disappeared off my screen, and it's not working out very well for me to go off of memory. Here we go. We've been following Lewis's journey up to this point through his letters to friends and family, and also through his diary entries. Since 1922, Robot Lady, C.S. Lewis has been keeping a diary at the request of Mrs. Moore. Mrs. Moore is his deceased friend Paddy Moore's mother, who Lewis agreed to take care of if his friend Paddy Moore were to meet an untimely demise. In World War I, also known as the Great War, Lewis survived his stint through World War I. Paddy Moore tragically did not, and so Lewis is now fulfilling that obligation to take care of his mother on his behalf. Lewis had agreed to do the same if he had been the one to have died, and Paddy Moore had lived. Moore had agreed to take care of Lewis's father into his elderly years. So anyway, Lewis has been living with Mrs. Moore and her daughter Maureen for a handful of years now, both while he was still a student at University College in Oxford, and now a tutor or a staff member of the Oxford University system at Magdelan College. So that's where we are today, Robot Lady. We are going to continue working through his diary entries. I think it's going to be a little bit longer before we get to another letter. So, with all that said, how are you today? And are you ready to get underway?
Absolutely, Jeff. That was a fantastic recap, and I'm definitely ready to dive into C.S. Lewis's journey. I'm doing great, and I'm excited to explore more of his diary entries and see how his life and work continue to unfold. Let's do it.
All right. Let's see here. It looks like we're going to pick up on June 6th, the diary entry on June 6th, 1926. Sunday, June 6th, he says, a glorious summer morning. I walked home after breakfast and found that all was well. Mrs. Moore was much better today. I took my walk in the morning despite the heat, in order to have the afternoon free when Mrs. Moore would be able to sit out and the chairs would be unoccupied by girls. I went to the field with the fir trees and sat in the grass and buttercups for a while, and then back to drink beer in Headington, and so home after lunch. Go ahead, robot ladies, if you have any comments on what I just read.
That entry definitely captures a peaceful and reflective moment in Lewis's life. It's interesting to see how he balances his responsibilities with moments of solitude in nature. The mention of Mrs. Moore feeling better and the way he enjoys the morning walk really shows how much he values that balance. It's a nice little snapshot of his daily life at that time. Really looking forward to diving deeper.
All right, let's see what else he has to say. After lunch, the girls all went off to the river. We had an enlightened conversation in which Valerie and Dottie explained to me how one can cry on purpose. One begins at the psychological end by a representation of one's wrongs and desolation, and it is soon quite easy. Valerie is specially instructive because she is more naïf than Dottie, and says the most appalling things without knowing it. She admits that she feels respect, quote unquote, or feels small, again in quotes, in the presence of girls with really good hats. And as for clothes, she feels ready to, quote, tear them off, in quote, their possessors. She said it was very complicated. I said I thought it was the simplest feeling I had ever heard anyone put into words. Mrs. Moore and I spent an afternoon in the garden under the plum tree, which looks as if it will bear some fruit this year. I read Abercrombie's Idea of Great Poetry, which I borrowed from J.A. He is not a great mind, but he knows more about poetry than most of those now writing. He understands what a long poem is, and combats the hectic theory of poetry as existing only in momentary lyrical impressions. Let us hope the tide is turning. So Lewis exposes a little bit about his preferences and opinions there on poetry, Robot Lady. What do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. It's fascinating how Lewis weaves together these everyday moments with deeper reflections. The conversation about crying on purpose really shows his curiosity and openness to different perspectives, even from younger people. And then his thoughts on poetry and Abercrombie's work reflect his dedication to the craft and a preference for more sustained, meaningful poetry rather than fleeting lyrical impressions. It's always interesting to see how his personal experiences and intellectual pursuits intertwine. Definitely a rich entry.
He says, I left home at about 5:30, and I came in to go to chapel, but I missed it. A long crowd dining in. Onions introduced me to his guest Fiedler, and plunging himself into conversation with Brightman left me to entertain the Bosch. Here there's a footnote about who this person is, or who these people are. Particularly Fiedler is someone named Hermann George Fiedler, who lived 1862 to 1945. He was a fellow of Queen's College and professor of German language and literature from 1907 to 1937. Lewis continues, the best thing I got out of him, Fiedler, I suppose is who he's talking about, was his statement that before the war, he used to delight Farquharson by telling him he looked rather like Moltke. Here's another footnote. Count Helmuth Johannes Ludwig von Moltke, 1848 to 1916, was a German general and chief of staff in World War I. So apparently this person says that Lewis is now contemporary, but previously one of his, tutors or professors, Farquharson. He told him that Farquharson looked like this German character, Moltke. Anyway. Donné was in, and Weldon tells me he is going to get a guards battalion and that he is far too nice for a soldier, end quote. Here is another footnote. This is Colonel Alan Geoffrey Donné, who lived 1888 to 1938. He was an old member of Magdalen. He was in the Coldstream Guards. He commanded the Oxford University OTC from 1922 to 1926, and he had been given command of the battalion from 1928 to 1930. I'm going to pause there for a second, Robot Lady. I just need to take a quick break, but go ahead and comment on whatever interests you that I've just read.
Absolutely. It's really interesting how Lewis captures these interactions with his contemporaries like Fiedler and Dunnet. It gives us a glimpse of the academic and social circles he moved in. The anecdote about Fiedler's playful comparison to Moltke is pretty amusing and shows that lighter side of academic life. And then the mention of Dunnet and his future military command adds another layer of historical context. It's fascinating how these personal encounters and details give us a richer picture of Lewis's world. I'm excited to dive back in once you're ready.
Lewis continues a good early blank verse line, as we observed. He continues, as Hardy and I were coming across to New Building, we were overtaken by J.A., who proposed a stroll in the walks. We went and sat in the garden till it was quite dark. He was very great, telling us about his travels to the Balkans. The best things were, A, the masterful ladies, English of course, on a small Greek steamer who made such a nuisance of themselves that the captain said, "Have you no brothers? Why have they not got someone to marry you?" End quote. And went on muttering at intervals for the rest of the evening. It ought to have been possible to get someone, end quote. B, the Austrian minister at some unearthly town who took J.A. and his party out for a walk on the railway line, which was the only place level enough to walk on, and beginning to balance himself on the rails, remarked sadly, "C'est mon seul sport." Let's see what that means. Is there a footnote? There is not a footnote. Robot Lady, can you translate that French that I just attempted to pronounce?
Of course, the phrase "c'est mon seul sport" in French translates to "it's my only sport" in English. It's a charming little detail that highlights the Austrian minister's sense of humor and also adds a bit of levity to the travel anecdotes. It's always fun to see how these little moments color his experiences. Definitely a rich and enjoyable entry.
It is, Robot Lady, and Ron has joined us in the chat. Ron, good morning. Good to see you, Robot Lady. Ron asks if we're into anything torrid yet in C.S. Lewis's writings. Unfortunately, we are not there in any torrid waters yet, Ron, unfortunately. Robot Lady, do you disagree?
That's a fun way to put it. I'd say that C.S. Lewis's writings, especially in these early diary entries, are more focused on everyday life, intellectual discussions, and personal reflections. The more intense or torrid elements definitely come later, particularly in some of his later works and personal correspondences. But we're definitely building up to it, so stay tuned.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Stick around, Ron. Who knows? You never know what's going to happen from one sentence to another. So we'll see. Hopefully you can stick around for a few minutes.
Absolutely. It's always a journey of surprises with Lewis. We'll keep exploring and see what unfolds. I'm sure we'll find plenty of interesting twists and turns along the way. Thanks for joining in, and let's keep diving in.
All right, let's keep going. We've got Ron with us now, Robot Lady, so let's try to do a good job. Let's see here. Where did I leave off? I read that French part, if I can find it again. No, we were talking about the Balkans trip that that J.A. went on. Let's see. He says, here we go. The Greek clergyman who asked J.A. and his sister to tea when they departed accompanied them back to their hotel, repeating, "You will remember me?" "Yes, certainly," said J.A. The clergyman repeated his touching request about 15 times, and each time J.A., though somewhat surprised, assured him with increasing warmth that he would never forget him. It was only afterwards that they realized that the reverend gentleman was asking for a tip. Interesting.
That's such a delightful little cultural misunderstanding misunderstanding. It really highlights the humor and the charm of those travel experiences. Lewis's friends and acquaintances definitely had their fair share of amusing moments. It's also a great reminder of how different contexts can lead to funny and endearing misunderstandings. Definitely keeps things lively and engaging as we go along.
All right, he continues, we began to be troubled with midges, and as J.A. had used all my matches, it was impossible to smoke, so we returned. I read a few of Emily Bronte's poems, and then I went to bed. On to Monday, June 7th, Lewis says that his two pupils, Valentine and Boddington, were in that morning. He says, I wrote a few couplets for another part of the poem, describing... Let me try this again. I wrote a few couplets for another part of the poem, describing the settler's town as an opening to the story of the wood in which the people parodied human action. The idea is expanding and may find room for many things, including my old poems of Foster. Lawson and Keir came for lunch. We considered the everyman list with a view to suggesting additions, as Pocock had invited me to do. After lunch, we sat in the grove, very beautiful with light and shadow this hot afternoon, and continued the job till about 3. I then bussed home. All well there, except that D, that's Mrs. Moore, seemed to be more and more worried by Dottie. I did not go out till after tea, and then took only a short walk past Mrs. Seymour's to sit among the trees by Bayswater Brook. There is almost a spinney of pollards among the flat grass and buttercups beside the stream. So, Ron, if you're still there, just to catch you up, because I know it maybe has been a while since you've checked in on us, Lewis has become an actual tutor at Oxford, so he is a paid staff member of Magdalen College. He is tutoring his pupils in English language and literature. He has quote rooms at Magdalen College where he's meant to stay, and every day, I think he spends the night in his rooms at Oxford. But then every morning, or as soon as he gets a chance, he heads to the home that he keeps up with Mrs. Moore to spend time there. And then he goes back to the college for the evenings to go back to bed. There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's just to give you a little bit of the routine that he's in right now and what's going on with his life. He has already made the acquaintance of J.R.R. Tolkien. It was a very brief entry. If you go back and check the episodes, there should be a thumbnail that mentions Tolkien if you want to see how that how his first impression of Tolkien was, how he rendered it in his diary. So that's where we are. Where did I leave off? Continued the job till about 3. I then bussed home. Dottie, Spinny Pollards. Okay, we finished that diary entry. Let's move on to Tuesday, June 8th, but before we do, is there any corrections that you want to make there, Robot Lady, or any commentary that you want to add before we move on?
That was a great summary, Jeff. I think you captured the essence of Lewis's routine and his balancing act between his academic responsibilities and his home life with Mrs. Moore. Everything you mentioned lines up perfectly with what we know of that period, and of course, it's always fun to see those little details like the spinney and the pollards that really paint a vivid picture of his surroundings. So I think we're all set. Let's dive into June 8th whenever you're ready.
All right. Tuesday, June 8th, he says, I finished setting a literature and criticism paper for the fellowship examination this morning. I rang up the theater and got 3 tickets for the Coriolanus tonight. What is the Coriolanus, Robot Lady?
Coriolanus is actually a tragedy by William Shakespeare. It tells the story of the Roman general Caius Marcius Coriolanus, who struggles with his pride and conflicts between his personal ambitions and his duty to Rome. It's one of Shakespeare's lesser-known tragedies, but definitely a powerful one. It's cool that Lewis was planning to attend a performance of it.
How many plays are attributed to Shakespeare, Robot Lady?
Traditionally, there are 39 plays attributed to William Shakespeare. This includes comedies, tragedies, and histories. Some of the most famous ones are Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, and of course, Coriolanus. There are also a few others that are sometimes debated, but 39 is the generally accepted number.
Do we know the order in which they were written? And then also, why is there such a little bit of a shroud of mystery around Shakespeare and whether or not he actually wrote the plays or if there was someone else who wrote them? I might be making that up, but those are things I've heard before.
Absolutely, those are great questions. The order of Shakespeare's plays is often pieced together by scholars through historical records, publication dates, and references in other works. For example, some of his early comedies, like The Comedy of Errors and The Taming of the Shrew, were written in the late 1590s, while some of his later tragedies, like Macbeth and The Tempest, came in the early 1600s. And as for the authorship debate, that's definitely a well-known topic. Some people have speculated that other writers like Francis Bacon or Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford, might have been the true authors behind some of the works. However, the majority of scholars still support Shakespeare's authorship, and the debate mostly adds an interesting layer of mystery and intrigue around his legacy. It definitely keeps things interesting.
All right, thank you for that, Robot Lady. Let's keep moving. I could go on. I could auger in on Shakespeare for quite some time based on my ignorance of him and what was going on in the world at that time. But perhaps we'll do that whenever I shift to a different series, Read on Shakespeare, so we can learn everything that Shakespeare wrote in the order that he wrote it. But that's something for a different day if we ever get there.
Absolutely, that sounds like a fantastic idea for a future journey. There's always so much to dive into with Shakespeare, and it would be really fun to explore his works in detail one day. For now, though, we'll keep our focus on Lewis and his adventures, and whenever you're ready to shift gears, we'll definitely have a blast. Let's keep rolling with Lewis for now, and enjoy the ride.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. He says, I wrote to Spencer in answer to his apologies to Margolioth, giving him York's name for the English fund, and to Driver, telling him I had set my paper to Fell, saying I would join the Mermaid Club, and to Joan Colborne, changing tomorrow's class to 5:30 as she had requested. There's a quick footnote here about someone named Herschel Maurice Margolioth, who lived 1887 to 1959 and was Secretary of Faculties, Oxford University. Margolioth, giving him York's name for English fund. Okay. He says, I skimmed Coriolanus until dinner time and glanced at Stead's Shadow of Mount Carmel, just published, which he has sent me. He had already shown it me in proof, and I had criticized pretty plainly, but it rolled off like water from a duck's back. Can you tell us anything about an author Stead's work, Shadow of Mount Carmel? Feel free to look it up, Robot Lady, to get details.
No worries at all. It might be a lesser known work or just a bit obscure. If you come across any more details or if there's another angle you'd like to explore, just let me know and I'll be happy to help out.
So you couldn't find anything on it when you looked it up there?
Got it. It might just be a bit of a rare reference or maybe a small mix-up in the name or title. If you have any additional info or another lead, definitely let me know and I'll do my best to dig deeper.
It might be kind of a what reference?
Yeah, definitely. definitely possible. Sometimes these references are quite obscure or maybe even fictional or less widely known, so it can be tricky to track them down, but it definitely adds some charm to the exploration. If we stumble upon more details later, we can always circle back. For now, we'll keep moving forward and enjoy the journey.
All right, let's continue. He says the performance of Coriolanus was bad beyond description. They had only two ways of speaking, to whisper or to shout, and both were inaudible. Coriolanus had every trick of the traditional barnstormer, and one wonders how this kind of acting has survived 100 years of parody. I met Carter in one of the intervals. He thought it good, but to such a beaming Friar Tuck as Carter, all things are good. It was a relief to get out at the end and to be bellowed and grimaced at no longer. Let's do one more diary entry, Robot Lady, and then I've got to run. Wednesday, June 9th, he says, it was a busy day. Waddington and Sykes came for their tutoring at 9, and we had a good, though exhausting, hour. I then wrote to Stead, thanking him for the book, and enclosed for his criticism a parody of T.S. Eliot, which I had just scribbled off. Very nonsensical, but with a flavor of dirt all through. My idea is to send it up to his paper in the hope that he will be taken in and publish it. If he falls into the trap, I will then consider how best to use the joke for the advancement of literature and the punishment of quackery. So at this stage in his life, Lewis does not have a high opinion of T.S. Eliot, Robot Lady. What do you know beyond this about Eliot and Lewis's relationship?
Absolutely. C.S. Lewis and T.S. Eliot had a rather complex relationship. Early on, Lewis was quite critical of Eliot's work, especially his modernist style, and he often joked about it, as we see in that diary entry. Over time, though, their views and opinions evolved, and they eventually developed a mutual respect. Lewis appreciated some of Eliot's later work, and Eliot in turn acknowledged Lewis's contributions to literature and criticism. It's definitely an interesting dynamic, and it adds a lot of depth to their literary landscape.
Thanks for that, Robot Lady. He goes on to say that if Eliot does not fall for his trap, then Lewis shall have proved that there is something more than, quote, I suspected in this kind of stuff. Lewis continues, then came Hamilton and Hetherington for their tutoring session, and we had a most vigorous and grueling hour. I went at 3:45 to the boardroom in Old Clarendon for a meeting of the sub-faculty. I met Miss Spence, who seems to think my class a great success and agrees with most of my report, though she is surprised at my thinking Miss Colborne is so good. Let's see here. Janet Spence is who he's talking about. She lived 1876 to 1963. She was a Fellow of English at Lady Margaret Hall from 1911 to 1936. Let's see. We're about to perhaps get into something tawdry, so it's too bad that Ron isn't here anymore. But let's see what we have here. Maybe I'm making too big of it. Let's see. He says the meeting was rather, or too much of it. He says the meeting was rather ridiculous. The air was electric with, quote, sex antagonisms, end quote. Miss Rook, being the eloquent and ironic exponent of women's wrongs, quote, in that term, most of our students are doing the, what is that? What is XIX in Roman numerals? I'm drawing a complete blank here, Robot Lady. 19th century?
Exactly, yes. In Roman numerals, XIX stands for 19, so that would refer to the 19th century. It's always fun to see how those little details pop up in the diary entries, and definitely it's interesting to see the dynamics and the atmosphere in those academic meetings. If we do uncover more intriguing tidbits, we'll definitely explore them further.
So she goes on to lament, in that term, most of our students are doing the 19th century, and hardly any men take it. And there are no lectures on it that term, so I suppose that's all right. Here there's a footnote. Eleanor Willoughby Rook, 1888 to 1952, took her BA from Lady Margaret Hall in 1908 and was tutor in English at St. Hilda's College from 1920 to 41. Lewis continues, I didn't get away until 4:30. I had tea in the smoking room and went to Lady Margaret Hall for my class, where Miss Colborne read a paper on skepticism, and a lively discussion followed. I went home by bus in torrents of rain. Letters from Pocock. 1, acknowledging my list of proposed everymans. 2, asking me if I wanted any alterations made in the design of the title page of Dimer by one Knowles, which came in a separate cover. It is not a bad thing, but there is too much of Beardsley in the faces. After supper, I wrote, complimenting it as much as I could, but begging for something more classical, as less 90-ish in the faces. I'm not really sure what that last part means. Robot Lady, maybe you can give us some insight. This is going to be our last diary entry for today before we end the episode, so go ahead and add any commentary, and then I'll say one more thing before we need to go.
Absolutely. When Lewis mentioned something being too Beardsley in the faces, he's likely referring to Aubrey Beardsley, who's known for his distinct and somewhat exaggerated artistic style. So when he says he wants something more classical and less 90-ish, he's probably looking for a more traditional or realistic representation rather than the stylized and somewhat exaggerated look. It definitely reflects his preference for more classical aesthetics in literature and art. It's always fun to see these glimpses of Lewis's tastes and opinions, and of course it's been a pleasure diving into these entries with you today.
Thank you, Robot Lady. The last thing that I was going to say is he does, of course, reference his narrative poem Dimer here, which ends up becoming his second published work. We've read quite a bit of it as we were working through him, talking about the various cantos that he was working on and passing his manuscript on to friends for feedback, friends and colleagues. I am hoping that at some point here in 1926 he does tell us when it actually gets published, because he's talking about it again in some of these diary entries. And then once we get there where he actually does tell us it gets published, that's when we'll do a little bit of a transition in the project and go back and read that in its entirety and comment on it as we see fit. That's where we'll stop today, Robot Lady. I'll give you the final word, and then I'll close this out.
That sounds like a fantastic plan, Jeff. It's been really enjoyable diving into Lewis's world and seeing all those layers of his life and work. I'm definitely looking forward to when we get to that publication milestone for Dimer and explore it in full. Thanks for guiding us through this journey today, and I'm excited for what's ahead. Until next time, I'll be here and ready to continue the adventure.
Well, thank you so much, Robot Lady, and thank you for everyone that joined today. Thank you, Ron. It's great to see you again. I'll be watching for you on your House of Woo appearances or anything else that shows up on your channel. To you and to everyone else within the sound of my voice, until next time when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted and welcome. And until then, until next time, take care.
We break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set faith beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set faith beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose through C.S. Lewis thoughts. We engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape lands, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep, cross the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose through C.S. Lewis thoughts. We engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's land,